Hello everyone and welcome back. If you watched the first two videos in video one, you'll recall that we just went through registering, downloading, and installing the Umajin App Creator as a fairly quick video. And in the second video we just did a UI walkthrough so that you could get familiar with the interface and where various things in the interface were located. And now we're on to video number 3, and in this video we're actually going to build our first app. And some of the things we're going to be doing is we're going to be using UI and action components. We're going to be going through and explaining and creating pages, templates, foregrounds. We'll be using feed lists and the Umajin CMS system, as well as dynamic forms and styles. So there's a lot going on in this video, but we're basically going to start from scratch with no app, and in the end you'll have a fully functioning application. Now this is a follow along video, so in the description for the video, if you look, there's a link to an asset pack there, just a zip file that you can download. That's going to have all the assets that we need to go through and do this little training video. So that's going to have all the images. There should also be an Excel spreadsheet there so we can populate the CMS system with some data. So you definitely want to go through and just download that file first before continuing. And then you'll just be able to follow along with me and build the same app that I'm building. After video 3, there is a fourth video. So once we've completed all this, you built the app and did all of this, we're going to go ahead and extend your first application. So we'll be adding item ordering, shopping cart type system to the app. We're going to go through custom scripting. We're going to go through creating a companion app, which is where you have two apps that sort of interact with each other. And then also using Umajin Preview, which is the ability to actually run your app on your phone so you can play with it, see how it's going to look. And this would be something you do prior to uploading it to an app store. So you can actually use it on your device before you have to actually go ahead and submit it. So that'll be in the fourth video once we finish video 3. So that being said, let's jump right into it and go ahead and create our first app. Okay, once you're ready to go ahead and get started, you've downloaded the asset pack, just go ahead and launch the Umajin App Creator. And we're going to go ahead and just select create a new project. And it should bring you to this screen. And we're going to go ahead, we're going to start from a completely blank application. So we're going to do this 100% from scratch. So we'll just go ahead and select new blank app and hit create. And then we're going to give this a name. Now, as for this example application, if you've taken a look through the asset pack already, you've noticed there's lots of images of foods and drinks. I decided what we'll probably do is just a restaurant app as an example. So this will be an app where you can sort of browse the menu, drinks, food. You can do things like maybe sign up for a mailing list. And then when we go to extend the app, we'll make it so you can actually order your drinks and order your food from the app. And then the companion app that we'll make will actually be for the business side, where they can actually receive those incoming orders for foods and drinks. So that's my idea for this training video. And so we're going to go ahead, we're going to call our new project Cuba Libre, and that's going to be the name of this fictional restaurant. And I got that name, if you look in the asset pack, that's one of the names of the drinks that was there, and I said, you know what, that looks good enough to use as a name for this restaurant. So we'll just go ahead and enter that and click create. Obviously you can create your own name if you'd like. And there we go, we have our new app is created. We just have this basic starting landing page, and it's gone ahead and put this lovely Umajin logo in there for us, which we're actually not going to need. So you can just go ahead and click the little trash can here, go ahead and delete that. Now the first thing we're going to do before we get started is we need to bring in all those assets that you downloaded so that we can use them with our application. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead to the project folder, and you can do that by just clicking on the little Hamburger Menu here and selecting project folder. Now that brings you to the root of the project folder, so you'll see a lot of different folders here. All of the assets I gave you are images, so we don't have any other assets we're going to be using for this. So what you're going to go ahead and do is just paste those in here. Now my recommendation would be to paste the whole folder so you can sort of keep those organized and not mixed in with everything else. New images will show up here as we add certain components. They'll create their own folders for sort of image assets that those particular components have. So just for organization, I'm just gonna keep it. I'm gonna have a folder called Cuba Libre, and I'm just gonna keep all the Cuba Libre specific images stored in there. You'll also notice you have some other things like animation, audio, fonts, HTML, and you could have other assets that are things like videos and custom JavaScripts, and you want to bring in your own font. You can absolutely do that, and you just paste those particular resources within their respective folder. Fonts is a good example. You'll notice by default you have 3 fonts in here. If there's a font you want to use within your system that's not one of the ones listed here, which I'm sure you will want to do, just copy and paste that specific font file right in here. Now the reason why you don't just have every font here is because the font actually gets packaged with your application. And so font files can in some cases be fairly big, and if you were to take your entire font library and just put it in here so you could select any font in your library, you would end up packaging a ton of fonts that you're not actually using, and that space will add up quickly for the size of your application. So really you just want to select whatever fonts you want to use specifically and copy those in here. These are the 3 that are here by default. Okay, so once our images have been basically imported into this project, we can just go ahead and close out our project folder. Okay, so we have just this default landing page that we've created here. I'm actually going to rename the landing page. Our first page I'm going to make actually a little splash screen. And so to rename this page, all I have to do is double click on the page itself, and I can go ahead and just call it, we're going to just call it the splash page. And what I'm thinking we'll have to do is maybe some sort of little animation here that'll play, and then from here it'll go into our actual main application. So the first thing we're going to do to create this is we need to add some sort of components in here. We need some sort of visual resources. So I'm just going to hit the little plus sign here right next to the project name, and that'll bring up our component selector. Now in this case these are all going to be UI based components. You may have noticed in the PowerPoint I talk about action components. We'll get into those shortly. But when you click the plus sign up there, it's all going to be UI based ones. And so that's everything. We have buttons and images and rectangles and text, drop down menus, glass shelves, etc. So we're going to go ahead and select image. We're going to bring an image in, and then we're going to go ahead into our Cuba Libre folder. And I'm first going to go ahead and grab this little logo I created, just the name of the restaurant. And we can even rename this. By default, it's going to call it image 1. If I had another image, it would be image 2. We're just going to rename this. We'll go ahead and call it logo. And I'm going to bring in one more image. And I'm going to go ahead and bring in this flag. And we can go ahead and call this flag. Fantastic. Okay, so now we're just going to line these up all nice. Make it look like something. And now I go ahead and make an animation. And so what I'm going to do that is I want the animation to happen right when the application launches. So what I'm going to do that is this is going to be a component, an animation component, but it's going to be an action, right? Because it's going to be triggered by some sort of event. And so it's not going to be an action of the images themselves, it's going to be a page action. So we're going to go ahead and select the page. And you'll notice you have this actions tab here, right? So every component has an actions tab. And depending on the component determines what sort of actions you have. Now in the case of image files or images, it's just an on press. So if you were to click it, you can make something happen. If we go to the page, you can see there's many more trigger events for actions for an entire page. So it could be like maybe something happens before the page loads, maybe after the page loads, maybe on various swipes. maybe on press of the page, etc. In this case, we're going to say after the page loads. So once it's actually loaded the page and the assets, we want to go ahead and do something. So we're going to hit just that little plus sign right next to the after page loads trigger. And that's going to bring up a component selection screen, except in this case it's not UI components, they're action components. So we can see we have 3 tabs at the top: simple, advanced, and custom. And so you can see there's many various components here. Simple has your more basic, more common ones. Advanced has more advanced things you can do, like connect to Bluetooth devices. You can do various things with feed lists. You can change your Bluetooth frequency, stuff like that. None of which we're going to need to use in this particular project. I lied. We're going to use the animate component one, so we will use one of the advanced ones. And under simple, you have things like you can make it dial a certain phone number. So we could actually make a text box, put it in here with the number of the restaurant, and when you click it, it automatically opens up the dialer on the phone and dials that number, for example. You can make it open up a map, which is also useful. You put the location of this particular business in, make it open up maps. Things like send emails, show pages. We'll be using quite a bit of the show page action to link up all of our various pages. But for now, we're going to go ahead and use the animate component. The customs tab, you'll see there's nothing here. This is once you start creating custom JavaScript actions. So with JavaScript, you can create your own UI components and you can create your own action components. And so once you create those scripts, and those are placed in that little scripts folder that you may have saw when you were copying over the image assets, those will show up here and you'll be able to select them. We're definitely going to cover that in another video, but not in this particular one. But video number 4, I will show you how to create custom actions and custom UI components. That's going to be a really good video. So let's go back to advanced, and we'll go ahead and select animate component and click insert. You can also just double click animate component. And now we have, you can see under after page loads, you can see the animate component here. And we have some properties that we can change. So first we're going to select our component, and you'll see it's the 2 components we have, the logo and the flag. And then we can choose the animation that we want. There's a whole bunch of different ones: bounce, zoom, spin, squash, stretch, rock, flip, different sorts of fades, in from left, in from right, fade out, etc., etc. You can see all of those. We're going to go ahead and I think we're going to go with the bounce. We'll select the flag, we'll say bounce. You have this delay time here, so that's how long until it should run. So basically it's saying exactly 1 second after the page loads to go ahead and do the bounce. So if we hit play, you'll see flag, waits a second, and then it bounces. I actually want to make both of these bounce, so I could go ahead and add another animate component and do the same thing for this. But instead, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to group these 2 objects because I want them to behave like basically like they're one image, they're one object. So what we can do is we can go back and add another component. So we click this plus sign, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to select the group component, and that's under layout. So basic layout and then group. And then once we insert that, now you can actually add items to this group. So if you click on the group, you'll notice you get this little plus sign. You can actually add components directly into the group. Now, we've already added these components, but that's not a big deal. We can actually move them into the group. If you select a particular item, you'll notice these little arrows on the left. They point up and they point down. If you click them, if we click up, it's actually going to move it into the group, because the group happens to be right above it. If we click up again, then it moves it just above the group. It's not actually in the group anymore. And the same thing here. If we click up, it's going to go into that group. If we click up again, it's above the group. And so the best way to think about these little arrows when you move things around is they're just like layers. So if you use Photoshop or any other photo editing software, you have layers. It's the exact same thing. If you use PowerPoint, you have layers where you center back, bring forward. It's the exact same concept. So higher up on the stack, higher up you are on the layer. So to give you an example, the logo is below. See, if I move and drag it, it's going to show up behind the flag. But if I now go over here and move the logo up in the stack, it's now on top of the flag. So basic layering there. But in this case, we want to go ahead and we want to put them in the group. So I'm going to select them and just hit the down arrow until they are in the group. There we go. Now I can actually move these two together as if they're one. But let's go ahead and just fix my logo here. Get that lined up nice. And we'll just sort of center that. And now we can go back to, maybe we'll just name our group something here. We'll just call it logo group. And we'll go back to our splash page here and back to actions. And instead, now when I select component, you'll notice the group shows up. Now I have a third component. So I can click that. And now we'll get the whole thing to bounce together, so I don't have to do two separate animations. We can also go ahead and just probably take that delay down so it does it immediately. So you launch the app and that thing bounces. Great. Okay, so now that's our splash screen, and the idea is once this splash screen goes, we want it to go ahead and just go right into our application. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and add a new page. So down below you see pages. We have the three tabs here: pages, templates, and foregrounds. Right now we're just going to go with pages, and you'll notice you have the little plus sign here and you have the little duplicate sign here. If you do the duplicate, you're essentially going to create a carbon copy of whatever page you have selected. That's not necessarily what we want to do because we already have a splash page, but that would be useful if subsequent pages were going to be very derivative. They're going to be very similar to a previous page. Maybe you're just going to change up a few components or a few items, but you didn't want to recreate everything. That could be very useful in that sort of circumstance to duplicate a page, but that's not what we're going to do here. So we'll just select that copy, and when you select a page, you get that trash barrel too. We can go just click that, and that will delete the whole page. Instead, we're going to hit the plus sign and add a brand new page that is completely blank. And we're just going to call this home. This will be the home screen of the application. So that works. And you can see we have nothing but just a solid black background. Now, if you want to change default background colors, you absolutely can. You just go ahead to this Hamburger menu, and we can go down to project settings. And here we can change all the default settings for the project. So here we see our project name. Now if you decided you want to change the name of this project, if you had did something different than I did and now you decided, you know what, that's actually a really great idea for the name of a restaurant, I'm going to go ahead and make it the same. Now's your chance. You can go ahead and change the name of the application. You can also set the orientation. So support rotation means you can have it in portrait or landscape, but you can also lock it to a particular orientation if you'd like. We're just going to leave supports rotation for now. Page color. This you can change the background color of the pages. So if we just do that, let's just hit save so you can see it. You can now see the default background color for a page is going to be that. And that's not necessarily what I want. I'm actually going to keep it as black. Okay, so let's just go ahead. We'll go back to the project settings. I'm going to change that back to black. You'll also notice you have some other settings here. They're for other various things. So if you look on the left, you have pop-up. These are when you get pop-up messages. Your spinner, so when it's busy doing something, the spinning logo, and then you have when a selection list gets popped up, and you can use these other settings here to sort of control the look and feel of those. So you can change colors. You can, for the pop-ups, you can put images back there instead of all white. You can change what the buttons look like as well, font sizes, text color, fonts themselves. With the spinner, you can actually change what the spinner icon looks like and control the spin speed. The selection list, like the pop-up, you can actually put a background image back there. You can control margins, and then fonts, and then also down here you have the inactivity. So you can actually make it so your application times out. So if no one's doing anything in the app for 5 minutes, you want to maybe take them automatically to a certain page. And you can see I just have the 2 pages here right now. That's very useful too, especially in like maybe a more secure application. Maybe you want to log somebody out or something like that. And then you can actually do a transition for that too. So I can say, hey, whatever page they're on, if they don't do anything for 2 minutes, just send them back to the home page. And then I can be like, oh, maybe we do like a fade or some other effect. I like the fades myself, just a simple fade. But we're not going to do any of that in activity for now. But so you have a lot of different settings that you can control. So we're just going to save it with changing that background back to black. There we go. And periodically you'll notice that thing up here just said save project locally, and then you'll notice it pops down again, save project to the cloud. So your project's always saved in 2 locations. You have your local copy that's right on your device that you're using, and then it also saves a copy of it to the Umajin servers. So you can actually go and log into the Umajin app on another device, and since there's a copy of it saved up there, it actually can pull it down, so you can work on the same project for multiple devices. You don't have to worry about syncing projects across them. They just will pull them down from the Umajin servers. Okay, great. So we have our home page here. So this will be the main page that you go to sort of navigate around. And so navigation obviously being a very important part of the application. And there's a lot of different ways that people will handle navigation in their app. Probably the 2 most common is you'll see the toolbar at the bottom. So you'll have a set of buttons that'll be at the bottom, or you'll have some sort of, or in addition to, you'll have like the Hamburger Menu. You have something like this that's in the corner of the app where you can use to navigate around. So we're actually going to use both of them just so I can show you how you do them. And the best way to go ahead and do that is to actually create what's called a foreground. And so now we're going to dive into the Foregrounds tab here. And basically what a foreground is, it's something that's going to overlay the page. It's going to be in the foreground of the page. So anything you add to the page is actually behind the foreground. It will be the topmost layer, and it will be fixed. And you'll see what I mean as we go ahead and start to create it. So the first thing we're going to do for this foreground is I want to go ahead and create a header, sort of bar at the top. So I'm going to just go ahead and, just like when I'm on a page, I'm going to hit the plus sign. I can do it there. I can do it right here. And I'm going to add a rectangle. So just go ahead and select that rectangle. And now I'm going to drag that rectangle. And this represents the whole screen, the whole page. And so all this little checkerboard area you see, that's what's going to show through. So if I just put this rectangle here, the page will show through, and this rectangle will just be stuck on top of everything. So what we're going to do is push this up at the top. We'll go ahead and make this, and we'll make it, I don't know, that's 10%. We'll go ahead, we'll stick with 10% for now. And then we'll go ahead and we're just going to call this rectangle, I'm going to name this rectangle because I think we're going to might have more than one, maybe just one. But we'll just go ahead and call it the header rectangle. And now I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to change the color of this rectangle, and I can do that through the properties. So I'm just going to select the rectangle and go to its properties tab, and then I can select the little color here, appearance, fill color, and go ahead and select a color. Now in this case I actually already have a color in mind, so you can manually enter a color. You can use this slider here, you can control the sliders down here, you can enter your RGB values directly here, but I have a color in mind already that I'm going to use. Feel free to use something different, but I'm going to go ahead and use 514B4B, and that's going to give me this little gray color here. Great, so now I have my rectangle and it looks gray. Fantastic. And next I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add a group. I'm going to go ahead, we're going to select group, because I'm going to put some objects at the top there. I'm just going to group them together. We're going to go ahead and call this my header group. Again, feel free to call anything whatever you'd like. And in this group, I'm going to go ahead and add an image. So let's go and select basic image. And I'm going to actually end up adding 2 images to this. First, we're going to go ahead and grab the Cuba Libre. Sweet. I'm going to put this right up in here. And then I'm going to add, we're going to just go ahead and call this logo. And then I'm going to go ahead and add another image. And we're going to look for the flag. Let's see, we go horizontal, we can go vertical. Let's try the vertical. We'll go with the vertical again. And then maybe just shrink it down a little. Put it right there. Cool. Just call that flag. Fantastic. Now we have our header group. If you now resize, once you put it in, you'll notice it'll just resize all of those. So everything's all together. Alright, perfect. And then I'm gonna just go ahead and center that. Perfect. For now. Okay, so now we have this little title header that we put up there. I'm gonna actually make the text fill up a little bit more of the space. We have the real estate, so we should use it. Get this a little bigger. Just want a little bit of gray above and below that. And then let's just move this over. There we go. Okay. So let's just take a look at our foreground. What is this actually doing? Let's go ahead. We're going to flip back to pages for a second so you can see what's happening here. And so if we go to pages, we're going to select home. We don't want a foreground on our splash page. And you'll notice with the home page you have this appearance and the properties. And if you look, you have foreground overlay. So we can actually just go ahead, has none right now, and select foreground. And you'll notice it'll just overlay those layers on top of our page. And the cool thing with this is we're going to build a menu in here. Is you just build the foreground once. And so now for each subsequent page I add, I can just go ahead and select that foreground and add some component I don't have to go ahead and recreate. I don't have to worry about layering and making it on top of everything by default. It'll always be on top of everything. So it's great. So let's go back to foregrounds. And now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we are going to add a menu to this. So this particular menu that we want, I think we'll just find it under layout, hamburger menu. There we go. So the hamburger menu is what you're looking for. You'll find it under the layout tab. Just go ahead and double click or click insert. And you'll notice you'll get this sort of default looking hamburger menu that's displayed. And by default, everything's going to be sort of expanded. If you just go ahead and click off, it'll go back. So this is our little hamburger menu. If you click this, you go ahead and get the drop down. So we can actually go ahead and just hit the play button here so you can sort of see the look and feel of that. Fantastic. And then we can put a bunch of selection items in here. So now let's go ahead and let's just custom tune our hamburger menu for what we want. So we're going to go to the foreground. So we're going to click our hamburger menu. We definitely do not need 9 options in our drop down. We're just going to need 5. So let's go to the top here. Let's just start deleting some buttons. So delete that, we delete 7, we delete 6, and we delete that one, and that leaves us with 5, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Perfect. Option 1, Option 2, Option 3, Option 4, Option 5. Okay, so let's now go ahead and we're going to change the text of these buttons because we obviously don't want them to just say option. And you can do that by on the left. So you notice when you added this hamburger menu, you got this a whole bunch of components. So if you remember before, we just had our header group and we just had our header rectangle. So we basically just had our rectangle, our logo, and our flag. And then once you added the hamburger menu, you can see underneath it has all these other sub items. So it has a group, and within the group it has all of these buttons, and it has some text. You can see they put an email there and a name, and then it has some images as well. So first thing we're going to do is change the text. So we can just select the button, and then if you're just make sure you have the properties tab selected for that button, and you'll notice under appearance you have text and it says option 1. So we're just going to go ahead and change these. I'm going to call the first one home, and then the next one we're going to just make say drinks, and then we're going to go ahead and make it say food. Reservations. So that's one thing we're gonna make it so you can actually make a reservation through this app too. So that'll be cool. And then mailing list. So you can sign up for the mailing list and get all those great coupons. Fantastic. Okay, now the next thing we want to change is I am not a big fan of this teal color. That's the default color. It doesn't go with the color theme for this app, so we're going to go ahead and change that. Now when you added this hamburger menu, you actually got a new folder created within your images directory. So if I go to my project folder, images, you will notice a new folder has been created called presets. And these have the assets for this hamburger menu. So you can see it has this teal bar, the background you're essentially seeing, as well as this image file and the icon for the hamburger and the icon for the cross, like when you want to close the hamburger menu, etc. And so I don't want to, these are the defaults. What you can do is I've already created one. It's in the asset folder, which is what we're going to use. But you can actually, all I did was open this up in Photoshop. And then once you do that, you can just go ahead, just so I preserve the resolution that it's in and I don't have to muck around or play with anything like that. You can just go ahead and do that and then save it as a new file, call it whatever color you'd like to call it, bar. And that's exactly what I did. If you go to Cuba Libre, we have one in here, and it's called something bar. So that's what we want to look for. I hope it's in here. Black hamburger bar. Perfect. That's the one we are going to use. So to do that, what we're going to do is just select our button. And then where it says default image, that presets teal, we're just going to go ahead and click the folder so that we can change it. And we're going to hit the back button and then navigate into the Cuba Libre folder. And then we're going to look for that black hamburger bar. There we go. Insert. Perfect. That's exactly the look I am going for. And now we are just going to repeat for all subsequent buttons. Don't have to do it exactly like I'm doing it. You can make it your own. Perfect. Done. So that looks good. Now the next thing I want to change about this context menu is it goes all the way down to the bottom here. So you can see when we go ahead and let's just play this, click that little play button, you can see this little gray background here extends to the full length of the application, which is not something that we want. So we're going to go ahead and just click on it. You'll see you get the little corners here, and this should be the second image, right? You can verify that very easily. If you notice, you have all these little eyeballs here, and those hide those particular components. So if I do this, look, the gray disappears, so that's indeed the right image I have selected there. And I'm just gonna, I don't know, maybe we'll just leave it a little bit. Let's see how that looks. Perfect. You know what? Maybe we'll leave it there for now. We'll see how this ends up looking. And then the next thing we want to do is you can leave the text. I'm actually going to get rid of this text. I don't think I really need it here. Any information I would put, maybe put the phone number there. And then I'm going to change this image. And so what I'm going to do is just select this image. Looks like it's called image 3. Click that folder, and then go navigate to my Cuba Libre folder, and we're going to swap that out. We're going to put something more interesting in there, like this little glass with the fire in the background, and that looks much better. Perfect. So now we play this, and here's our thing. And I think I've decided, after seeing that again, that we are indeed going to just get rid of that layer down there. Perfect. Okay, great. Now another thing you can do, as you notice that we were just previewing this, is you can sort of see how it would look on different form factors. So instead of hitting this play button, you'll notice the little try device button there. If you click that, it'll show you how the layout looks on different devices. And if you notice, it looks a little wonky. The Hamburger Menu button is not located in the same place every time. We notice that some of the text, the logo, the images are a little out of place as well. And we definitely don't want that. We want the look to be consistent across devices. So let's go ahead and fix that. And I'll show you exactly what is causing that issue. So let's go back to Foregrounds, and let's click our Hamburger Menu. And so now that we have our Hamburger Menu, and we're specifically actually clicking the button, because it was the button, if you recall, it's the button that's not staying right. Everything else seems fine, but that button is shifting all around. So we're going to go ahead and click on that button, which is Menu button. And if you notice on the properties, you have position and size. And some of these you'll notice are in percentages, and some of these you'll notice are in millimeters. And so what we want to do is we do not want to specify millimeters, because that's what's going to make it move around depending on the resolution of a particular device. We just want it to be in percentages. So just go ahead and change this to both of these to percentages. And now if you go ahead and hit the try device button again, you'll notice that that button stays pretty consistent. It stays in the same place across all three of these different devices. Perfect. Okay, so that takes care of our Hamburger Menu. Now we just need to take care of the image here, because again, if you look, it's running off of the our little rectangle there. So we're going to go ahead and go back to Foregrounds. We'll just select our image. And if you notice right here, this little checkbox, just uncheck resize to content. Looks like that must have got checked by mistake. We do not want it to resize. And now if we go ahead and just look, perfect. Right, it stays right there. Now the only other thing I want to fix is you'll notice the flag and the logo image, they move apart from each other. So it's a little wider, you can see it there. This is basically the same resolution we're at. And then up here on the iPad, you can see it really starts to separate. I want to keep those close together. So what you can do to do that is because right now they're basically aligning from center. So what we do is just go ahead and select the flag image, and in the properties you'll notice this align X, and what you want to do is push it all the way to the right so that it says 1, and then you're going to select the logo and you're going to push it all the way to the left so it says 0. And now when you go ahead and do the 3-device preview, you'll notice the flag stays in the exact same location each time. So perfect. We got the exact scaling we want between different devices and different resolutions. So that is good. Perfect. Okay, so now that we've done that, I think I want to add, we're going to go back to pages. We got our foreground here now. I want to go and start adding some of the additional pages we're going to need. But first, we're going to go ahead and I want to put a background image in because it's kind of boring with just the black background. So we're going to do this by just inserting an image. And the image I want to use is actually this one right here. Fantastic. And we're just going to go ahead and size this like so. And you'll notice it doesn't really take up the whole screen, but that's okay. So we're going to keep our image selected. We're going to first just change this and call it background image. We'll just call it background. It should be fine. And then we'll go ahead and change the crop mode and change the crop mode to fill. So what that'll do is it'll force the image to fill this whole box. It's different than stretch. You don't stretch. We'll stretch it out to fill everything, but it won't necessarily keep the proportions. So you can look, if you do stretch, it's just going to look like it's stretched out. That's exactly what it does. We don't want to do that. We want to maintain the appropriate portion. So we're going to say fill. And basically, see it basically it's almost like it's zooming in on the image. So we'll just do the fill, and that's perfect. That's exactly how I want it to look. Let's just bring this up a little bit because I don't want that black gap. And we can just hit the play button. Oh, wonderful. Alright, we are on our way. So now we're going to start to create some of the additional pages. But I want the look and feel to look just like this. So what I can do for that is I can just go ahead and click the duplicate button and duplicate the home page, and then I can sort of change the content within them themselves. So now we have this second page. We're going to call this drinks. Perfect. So now we got our drinks page, and on here we're essentially going to put it'll be a list, it'll be like a menu list of our drinks. And so to get that menu list, we're going to go ahead and add what's called a feed list. So just hit the plus button here, and then you're going to go to dynamic, and then you're going to select feed list. Perfect. And if you look, it's essentially empty right now. There's absolutely nothing there. And we'll just go ahead and call this our drink feed. Perfect. All our drinks will feed into here. Now, before we can use the feed list, there's quite a few things we're going to need to do. First, we need a template, and then we need to actually populate a CMS system with some data. So first, the template, because what this essentially is going to do is it's going to build a list of repeating information, right? So I could have, say, 10 drinks. What you're going to see here is a scrollable list of 10 drinks. It'll have the description, it'll have an image, etc. So the first thing we need to do is actually build that template for how the drinks will be displayed in that list. And so that's exactly what templates are for, right? So templates are for reusable items where you want the look and feel to stay the same. It's just the certain content is going to change, whether that's image, whether that's text, or something else. So the first thing we're going to do is when you drag up and down here, this is essentially setting the size of this template items, right? So if I right now set it to exactly 50%, what that means is that one item is going to take up half the space of the screen. If I have two items in my list, the second one will be scrolling in behind it. There'll be a small gap between them, so it won't just entirely fit here. If I take this down to, say, 60%, so an item is about 40% in height, then what you would basically see is as this scroll to the top, you see the other item below it coming in with a gap there. So it'll make much more sense when we actually get some data in here. So let's just go ahead and we're going to call this we're actually going to call this our product template, because we probably should be able to get away with using the same one for both our food and for our drinks. So we'll just call it the product template. And what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead first and add a rectangle so that we have something in the background. Great. And I'm actually going to make this much bigger. I'm going to make this almost that size. So we're going to leave 15% because we're going to need, that could be quite the lengthy description. And what I'm doing when I'm dragging, I'm just looking at these percentages. I just want everything to be the same. So essentially just giving it 2% all around. So we'll see how that goes first. Okay, so next we're going to go ahead. We're just going to call this, let's do rectangle. Just call it BG, background rectangle. And now we're just going to go ahead and add an image. And this image is going to change. So as the list gets populated, this image will change. We're just going to go ahead and put the signature drink in here. This is what the restaurant's named after. And we'll just go ahead and maybe we'll just make it so we get a little bit of some borders there, and shrink that down just a little bit. Perfect. Okay, so now we got an image of our drink, and we're going to call this drink image. And it's important, especially with templates, that you do a good naming convention, or that the names are identifiable, because in a little bit, once we link this up to our actual data, it's going to be important for when you do the mappings of what data goes to what location, that you're able to easily identify. Now this will be pretty simple because we'll have one image, so it'll probably be the only image there. But if you're doing something more complex, it'd be very important to give them meaningful names and not just use the default image 1, image 2, etc. Okay, and so next we're going to go ahead and add a text box. And this is going to be for the description of our drink. Okay, perfect. Now I can't see anything, and I can't see anything because the font is white. So let's just go ahead and change that to black. Perfect. And we're going to call this, again, giving it a meaningful name, we're going to call this description. And we can change that default text to description as well. Perfect. Okay. Now we're going to add one more text box. And we're going to call this one, double clicking here, price. So the price of our item. And we're going to go ahead and change this to black as well. And so this is a good example of why you would want to have that naming convention, because if this was text 1 and text 2, you know, you'd have to remember that, okay, text 1 I want to be my description, and text 2 I want to be the price. But now it's very self-explanatory when you go and do the mappings. And we're just going to add in some 0 zeros here just so we can get the alignment right. And I'm just going to stick it down in the lower corner here. Just right there. Perfect. So we have an image of our drink, we'll have the description of our drink, and then we'll have the price for our drink. And so all of these will be dynamic, right? So this is great. So we're going to go and put a bunch of information on our CMS system, and then we'll be able to dynamically populate this information. So now let's go back to Pages, and we're going to go ahead and select the drink feed, which again still looks blank. And now what you're going to do is, if you look under Data Bindings, you'll notice Template. So now you'll be able, since we created a template, we'll be able to select the product template that we created here. Now, when you do this, select this template, you'll notice this little button right here. This is so you can quickly just jump to the template. So if you click it, you'll notice you jump right to the templates, right to this particular template. So it's good if you're going to go and change something, you just click it. It just saves you a couple extra mouse clicks to get to that particular template, especially if you have more than one, and maybe it's not the first one. So mapping, we can't do anything just yet. Once we feed in the data, this mapping, what we're going to see is all the incoming data here, the different fields, and then right here we'll see all the components of the template. So we'll see the image, we'll see the 2 text boxes, and this is how we can map the fields to the template components. Okay, but we can't do that just yet. And if we go to feed ID, we see there's no data available just yet because we haven't created anything. So how do we actually get data into this? For that, we're going to use the Umajin CMS system. Now, if you have your own CMS system, Adobe CMS or something like that, PIMCore or something else, you can absolutely use your own CMS system. We're not going to cover that in this video. In this video, we're specifically just focusing on using our own CMS system that comes included with the App Creator. So if you can go ahead and click the Hamburger Menu, and then from here, you just want to go ahead and select Project Dashboard. And that is going to go ahead and open up your browser and take you to the dashboard for this particular application. And so what we want to look for is on the left, you should see Dynamic, and then you should see Feeds. And here's where we can create our feed. It says no data because we have no feeds. You just go ahead and click the plus sign, and now we can go ahead and create our feed. And so first we're going to give our feed a name. We're just going to call it drinks feed. I can spell today. Perfect. And you'll notice you have at first you have this little sort of Excel spreadsheet looking thing. That's what we're definitely going to use. If you scroll down, you have some other options as well. So we're going to enter data in this Excel spreadsheet. That's how it's going to get fed into the application. But you can also specify source URLs as data. So you want to point to some other resource. And there's a number of different resources we support. That could be a CSV document, it could be XML, it could be RSS, it could be JSON, a product list, Twitter. If you want to hook in a Twitter, we can pull in Twitter, Facebook posts, Facebook events. So this is what you can pull in now with our CMS system as far as external content goes. We're going to keep it all internal to the system and use this lovely Excel spreadsheet here. And so the way this will work is we'll essentially first create our column name. So this will be for the description. And we obviously need more columns. So what you can do is just right click here and you'll get this drop down. You can say insert column to the right. And we're going to need at least 3 because we need price and we need image. Perfect. Okay, and so now what you would need to do, and we can create one called name. So the name of the drink. Okay, and so now what you would essentially, all you'd have to do is go through and fill this information out for each one of your drinks. So we have our signature drink, and we can put some sort of description here, and we could give it a price. We could say that it's $8.50. And now for images, a number of things we can do here. We could, if you have a resource online somewhere, we can give this a URL, and we can use a URL to populate the image. But for this particular example, we're going to keep everything local. So the images directory is always assumed that you're starting in the root of images, so you don't have to ever specify images. What I mean by that is when you go to your project folder here, you have images. It assumes when you're supplying in images that at a minimum you're starting here. So if you have any subdirectories, you don't have to include the images directory. But if you have other subdirectories, you do have to include those. So for example, our drinks, our images are in the Cuba Libre folder. So what that means is we're just going to have to go ahead and make sure that we put before the actual name of our file, right? So then it would just be image, file, name, and whatever the format was. Let's say it was a PNG file. And that's it. Now another important thing to remember when doing this is your slashes. The path names are always going to use forward slashes. Do not use backslashes, especially if you're on Windows right now and you're just used to the Windows world. By default, you might just want to go ahead and use a backslash. Don't do that. It won't work. You want to use a forward slash. Now, data entry is not a whole lot of fun and not really the focus of this. So luckily for you, you don't have to actually enter in any of this data. If you go to your project folder, in that asset zip file of all the assets for this, you should have an Excel document that you can open up. That tells me it's already open. That's handy. And when you open it up, it'll have all the data that we want to put in the CMS system. So we can see here, drink name, description, price, image. Perfect. So we can just go ahead and copy this. And then let's go back to the CMS system. And then we can just go ahead and paste it. Voila. We can go ahead and skip the data entry. So that is handy. Now the next thing we want to do is we want to make sure we click this save button. Perfect. So now everything is saved. Okay, so we go ahead and click the save button and we should be good. We don't have to really mess with anything else here. This would be useful if we're doing some other type of feed. If we were sourcing externally, we could control things like the refresh interval, any sort of transform rules you had to do. But we don't have to do that for this. We're using pretty basic functionality of the CMS system. I'm just going to hold some of our data here. And let me just get rid of this last row because we don't need it. This is from before. There we go. And let's save that. Done. And you click feed ID. You should see our drinks feed will automatically show up there. Just go ahead and select that. And now we will be able to go ahead and set the mapping. So click on mapping. And we see here we have our, you see all those are all the columns we had created in that feed. Drink name, we're not actually going to use, we didn't really leave a spot for it. Should have, maybe we can go back and change the template. Description, we have one for, so let's go ahead and we're going to select description. You can see this is where the naming comes in handy instead of just saying text 1 and text 2 and image 1. Price, we want price, and the image, we want drink image. And once you click OK, you should see it populate with the data to the right. So we can see here, we have our drinks, and it is scrollable. Looks like I lost one drink. I'll have to look into that. Perfect. Now, the one thing I don't like about this is that, one, I don't like the image pushed up all the way to the top like that, and like a little border there. And two, I don't like it's so solid in the background. I kind of would like to be able to see through that a little bit. So that's a quick change. We can actually just go to our templates, and the first thing we can do is just move this down a couple notches. Move the description down just a couple too. And then we can go ahead and select our rectangle And we're going to change it so it's a little bit more transparent. So we'll say 60%. Let's try that. Oh, that looks a lot better. Because then you kind of get the background image coming through. I'm going to go just a little bit more. I'm actually going to go 47, 40, in the 40s. Go to 47. Perfect. There we go. Still can see the text. Can kind of see behind it. Looks nice. We'll have to figure out what's going on with that drink. I got a couple extra rows that we could remove there. But all in all, it's working. So now it's basically feeding this data in through the CMS system. So if you updated the description and whatnot, it would automatically, when someone launched this, it would change here since it's not fixed. Let's go ahead. We're going to make one more change. The text doesn't quite fit. So we're going to need to knock the font size down a little bit here. So let's just go ahead and 9 should be good. We could leave the price probably is fine like that. Yeah, that looks good. Now we can see the whole description fitting in there. Perfect. So let's just take a look at what's going on with our Bahama Mama drink. So a little troubleshooting demonstration here. Let's just go back to our CMS system. We'll go to the Bahama Mama drink. Oh, you know what? I see what the issue is. There is an issue in my Excel document. There should not be an S here. There we go. Save. And if you look, we switch back. Bet you it's already there. Don't even have to do nothing. Don't have to click any refresh or anything like that. It'll just show up. Perfect. And then why don't we just go ahead and get rid of these couple of rows I have there. Done. That should get rid of the empty ones at the end. Yep. Perfect. So if you ever see something in a template, you got like a whole empty item, there's nothing there. Usually, if you're using the little built-in spreadsheet in the CMS system, it just means you have some empty rows at the end, and you can have one empty row. That's perfectly fine. That won't show up here. But if you have more than one empty row at the end, you'll get some just empty items. That's not what you want. So great. So now we have our drink list built right in. Now the only thing though is we don't have any way to get to this drink list. So we're going to start linking up some things. If we recall, we start on the splash page, and as of right now, nothing happens. So we got to add some links in between these pages so you can actually navigate. So we're going to start back at our splash page. Probably should do this in the beginning, but that's okay. And what we're going to do is we're going to go to the Actions tab for the splash page again. And we're going to do after page loads, much like the animated component. But now what we're going to do is go to Simple and do Show Page. And we want it to show the home screen. And you can choose, there's a number of different animations that you can pick. I prefer just the fade. You can even control directions depending on the type of animation. I'm just going to say auto, so just a simple fade. But you have things like slide, rotate, wipe, burn, ice, page curl, page fold. But I'm a simple man. I like the fade. And we can go ahead and do that. And let's go ahead and play this. Now, if you'll notice, that went pretty quickly. We didn't even get to see our animation. And that's because they're starting at the same time. So after the page loads, it runs both of these components at exactly the same time. And you'll notice on Show Page, you don't get a delay like you get with the Animate component. So what do? What you're going to do is you're going to add a component after page loads, like we just were. But what we're going to do is we're going to add the wait component. So click Insert. And we'll tell it to wait 1 second. That's how long it probably will take to run the animation. And now we can go back and add the show page 1. So this is going to execute in order. It's just that They execute at the same time. So when we have the wait before, it will not continue down this list of execution until the wait has gone through. So we'll leave that at a second. Now we can do show the home page. We're going to say fade. We'll leave that at auto. And now when we run this, there's our bounce. Ha, perfect. And it fades to our home page. Of course, now we have no way to get to our drinks list. So let's hook that up. For that, we want to hook it up into our hamburger menu here. But remember, we created the hamburger menu in the foregrounds. So we just go to our foregrounds. And that's going to be drinks. So we're going to go ahead and select, this is the drinks button. And while I'm here, we might as well just, as we're doing this, give this good names. So I'm just going to call this drinks BTN for drinks button. Let's see, we have the home. So let's just call this home button. Let's call this the food button. And then let's call this res button. And we'll call this the mail button. Perfect. That way then things make a little bit more sense. So what we're going to do is we're going to hook up the drinks menu button. So let's go ahead and we're going to just say on press. It's the only action you have for a button is on press. Very simple. Show page. And in this case we want to show the drinks page. And for consistency, I'm just going to keep everything using fades. And then we also we have a home page. So let's hook the home page up while we're here too. Otherwise you'll get to the drinks page, you'll never be able to navigate back. And we'll just say the home button takes you to the home page. And again, we'll go with the fade. Perfect. Great. So now we got the 3 pages we've created are all linked up. So now if we go ahead and select the splash page and hit the play button, got our animation. Fantastic. Got our hamburger menu. Let's go ahead and hit drinks. Perfect. Now we can scroll through our drinks list. Looks good. Very nice. And let's go ahead, we hit this again. We should be able to go home. Look at that, back to our home. Nice. Okay, so now that we've done all of that, we have these pages completed. Now we're going to go and add the last 2 items that we talked about, which are reservations and mailing lists. So to do that, we're going to go and create a new page. We can just duplicate the food page for now, and then we're going to just delete this feed because we don't need a feed for this. And we'll rename this. We'll call this reservations, or just call it reservation. And then to actually get our reservation form in here, what we're going to do is add a new component to this page. You're going to go to the dynamic tab at the top, and you'll see a component that says dynamic form. Let's just go ahead and select that, click insert, or double click, and then just size this so it fits properly within our page. And so this already, you'll see there's a bunch of items here. This is just default what it fills in with. That's nothing you'll actually use. We haven't selected our form yet because we haven't defined one. So first let's go and change the name of our form, and let's just call this reservation form. And when we go to the properties of our reservation form, we'll notice that we have this data bindings, and right now it says none. And much like the feed ID, we'll be able to select a form ID, but right now we don't have any to select because we haven't created one. So let's do that. Go to your hamburger menu and your project dashboard. Then again, click dynamic on the left. Instead of going to feeds, we're going to go to dynamic forms and hit that little plus sign to go ahead and create a new form. Next, we'll give it a name. We're going to call it reservations. Don't need to change anything else, as we don't have any options here that we can change right now. We will leave this as active. The share button we're going to save for later on. When we go to the next video, where we're making a companion application, excuse me, we'll enable this share. I'll show what that does so that we can actually share this data with the companion application. So once we go ahead and put the name in, just hit save to go ahead and save that. And once you hit save, you'll notice you get this fields section that shows up with a little add. So now we can actually add our fields. So these are going to be all the fields we need for someone to make a reservation. So we obviously need their first and last name. There's no default value for their name, and we don't have any options. This is useful if you're doing some sort of list type of component where you need to define the items that are in the list. And then the type, single line. If you click this, you have a few options. We'll be sticking to just a couple of these, but everything from single line, multi-line, email, drop downs, date pickers, photo capture, check boxes, location, barcodes, all sorts of things that you can capture with a dynamic forms. This one's going to be single line. And then the next box is it required or not required? We certainly need to know their name, so yes. And then remember value. This is if they launch the application again, they come back to this form, will it remember what they last entered? And for something like a reservation system, absolutely. We don't want them to have to enter their name over and over again. And then lastly, the field index. This is the order in which it shows up in the list. This is the first item, so we'll put a 0 there. Whatever the numbers you use, it'll just order them by those numbers. So once we hit that, we'll just go ahead and click save. And now let's add the next field, which will be last name. Everything else will stay the same, except we'll change the field index to 1. Save. And we'll get their phone number. Save. Email. We're going to change the type to email so it can verify it's an actual email address. Get the date. Select the date picker. Don't need to remember the value for this because the next time they use it, it'll probably be a different day. Time. Don't need to remember this either. And we'll add one more, and that's going to be the number of guests. Don't need to remember this. I'll make that 6. And save. So now if we click Dynamic Forms, we'll see our reservations form there. You can click the Edit button if you need to make any changes. I actually need to make one change. I accidentally sent phone number to also be a field index of 0. Should be a 2, so I'm just going to go ahead and edit that. Make it a 2. Click Save. Great. So now all we need to do is switch back to the Umajin App Creator. And now we can go ahead and just select our reservation form, and then our form ID, which would be reservations. And now you'll notice that'll change over to all the questions we just put in. So if we hit the preview button, you can see that. Now it's a little hard to see the text. I have the black text and I have a black and white background photo. So I'm going to use the same technique I used before, and we're just going to add a rectangle. Make it just a little bit bigger than the stuff in the form. And we'll push that behind the form. I'll change the opacity. That's good. Now we'll go ahead and click the preview button again. It's much more readable now. So what we can do is, I've already filled this out, but you can just fill in all your information here. name, phone number, email, pick a date, pick a time, number of guests, and click the submit button. You'll get that thank you for contacting us, which we can customize this as well. And now if you switch back to the CMS system and go to your dashboard, you should see that submission you just did show up there. Now in our next video, when we make a companion app, which would be for the business side, we can actually make it so it automatically pulls this information in. You don't have to actually log into the website to view the submission. You also have the ability, though, if you go to your actual form, click the edit button, you can download all your submissions to a CSV file right here that you will then be able to open up with Excel or anything that supports CSV. But we're going to make it so that it'll actually download this data right to another application that we'll make in the next video. So we have one more dynamic form we have to make, and that's going to be for our mailing list. So let's go ahead and do that now while we're here. So we just hit the plus sign again. We're going to call this one mailing list. This one will be really easy, and we'll hit save. And now for fields, we'll add a field, and we'll do first name, save, last name, make that 1, save, and then we'll add one more, and we'll call this email, the actual email address. And that's all we'll ask. In this case, we won't ask too much information for the mailing list. Obviously, feel free to add as many items as you'd like. So now if we go to dynamic forms, we should see 2, reservations, mailing list. So now we're going to switch back to our application. We can stop the preview. And that's the one form we don't have. We have the one page we haven't created yet for the mailing list. But what we can do is it's very similar to the reservation form. So we can just click the reservation form and hit that copy button right there under the plus sign. And basically everything is going to be exactly the same. We're going to change just 2 things. One, we're going to change this. We're going to make this say mailing list, so it has a page name, we can identify it right. And then we're going to change our form here to be called mailing list form. And then next, we're just going to scroll down to our form ID, and it's not going to be a reservation, so we can click this and change it to our newly created mailing list form. And there you go. There you have. And it looks like I made a small mistake in my mailing list, but it's not a big deal. So that's where you can catch it when you go and you preview it. You can say, hey, didn't I have a first name in here? And I must have not hit the save button when I did that. So what I can do is just stop that. We can switch back to the dashboard. You can edit this particular form. And indeed, yeah, it looks like I just forgot to save it when I added first name. So we'll just hit the add button, put in our field that I forgot, click save, and now if you look at this again, there we go. We have the 3 fields we should have. That was my mistake. And now I'll switch back to the Umajin editor. And if you look at that, it just you didn't have to do anything. It automatically just updated from the Umajin CMS system. So you can see our first name popped in there. If we hit the preview, exactly how it should look. So let's just go ahead. We'll test this out. And now again, if you switch back to the Umajin CMS system, go to the dashboard for that project, you can see that submission right there for the mailing list to sign up. Okay, so we're almost done. We've just got a few more things we've got to tidy up, and we're going to do that in the foreground. So we just got to do the last of our linking for our buttons. So first we're going to select our mail toolbar item, and you'll notice if you look, when you go to foregrounds and you select this foreground, you'll see these A's. That means it has an action. And you'll notice we have our mail toolbar there. It has no action because we just created the page. We had nothing to connect it to before. So now we'll just go ahead and select it. And then in your Actions tab for the on-press event, the only event that this has, we'll do Show Page. And then we'll go ahead and select Mailing List. Great. And then also in the Hamburger menu, we need to link up food, reservations, and mailing list. You can see all three of these have no actions. So we select food. Again, we're just basically doing the same thing. Show page. That's going to go to food. We're going to make that fade. Click reservations. On press, show page. Reservation. Like that fade. And then we'll go ahead and click mailing list. On press, show page. And then make that go to the mailing list page. And fade. Voila, we should be good. Let's go ahead and run it from the beginning and see. So we select the splash page and hit preview. Get a little animation. Now on the bottom we should be able to select our buttons. We have our drinks. We have our food. Looks good. We have our mailing list. And you remember we specified to remember the information, so everything's going to stay there now on this particular device. And now if we hit our hamburger menu, we show the same thing. We can go to drinks. We can go to food. Reservations. And again, we had certain fields we say to remember, which were the ones that wouldn't change. And then date, time, and number of guests they'll set each time they want to submit a reservation request. And then mailing list, again, should be able to get there. So congratulations, you've made your first application from scratch, from the ground up. We started with absolutely nothing, and now you have an application that's got a splash page with an animation. We have two feed lists. We have two dynamic forms. We have two types of navigation. We have a hamburger menu and a toolbar item. So that's pretty good. For the next video, we're going to go ahead. We're going to show things like how to preview this on a device, how to do custom scripting, and some more advanced things. For those of you really eager to go ahead and just see what this looks like on your device, I'll give you a very brief overview. If you go to your respective app store, the Play Store, the Apple App Store, and just search for Umajin Preview. And if you download the Umajin Preview app and sign in with the same credentials you used for the App Creator, you should get a list of all your projects you've created in App Creator. And you can select it and it'll download the project and then run your application locally on your device so you can see how it looks. Now I'm going to cover all that. That's just a very brief overview if you want to go and explore and try it out right now. But I'm going to cover this in the next video as well. I'm going to do a screen capture of my actual phone so we can walk through it and see how that all works. But congratulations on your first app and hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you.